Hey, friends, neighbors, Catchman, barrel-chested freedom fighters all around the world. We got the old paratrooper. I am back again for another tale from the patrol base, our first one for 2024. And we have a very special guest tonight, Dr. Dale Comstock, who has a most impressive resume. He has been a Delta Force operator, where he participated in the Curtin Hughes hostage rescue operation, Operation Just Cause. He's been an SF guy. He worked for OGA during the GWOT. He has been a life coach, an entrepreneur, a businessman, a bodybuilder, a pro fighter, author, and what brought us on here today was he was in the original 82nd Airborne Divisional Reconnaissance Platoon, which was stood up in the early 1980s, which led to long-range surveillance. And wow, Dale, you have worn many hats. Welcome to
Yes,
our show. We're glad to have you here.
I appreciate you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Hey,
It's
man,
always
I've read your book, American Badass. Great book. And man, if you could kind of just tell you how you got this life journey started, kind of how you grew up, kind of because you've done a lot.
yeah. Well, let me just start with the book since we held that up, right? So for any of the viewers out there going, "Oh, American Badass," he thinks he's an American Badass. So let me tell you why I came up with the title American Badass and what that's really about. So I was on a reality show called Stars and Stripes with
Yep.
Terry Crews, Chris Kyle, American Sniper, and a bunch of other guys. But anyways, there was a part in the series where they did the introductions. Each guy had to get up and introduce themselves. For example, when it was my turn, I remember exactly what I said. My name is retired. My name is I'm retired Master Sergeant Dale Comstock, United States Army, the Delta Force. And then all the guys behind me go, "Badass, you fucking American," and they start saying that, right? And so that kind of caught on that moniker. And then I was standing around the vehicle one day with Chris Kyle, and I saw his book. I didn't even know he wrote the book American Sniper, and I commented on it, and then he made a comment about how he wanted to read my book and grow up to be like me.
Mhm.
I was 47 at the time. He was 32, um, so I was like, damn. So I've been meaning to write a book, an autobiography, and I've already written a book before, and a military manual. So I turned around and I called my management team and go, "Hey guys," I said, "I need to write a book." I said, "I want to write an autobiography, but," I said, "as weird as this may sound, I don't want it to be all about me." I said, "I want it to be about inspiring other people, particularly young American men and young boys, because I feel like they need some type of mentorship, some kind of guidance because they're losing their way. And
Absolutely.
so that's why I wrote the book. So the book, American Badass, is not about being a badass. I had basically it's about being a good ass, right? It's about trying to be a good citizen, a good soldier, a good father, all the positive attributes, not being gangster and a thug. But I just thought that the picture an American Badass, it would catch more attention, which it has, and even some negative attention. There's always the haters out there.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah.
a badass doesn't have to tell people he's a badass. Everybody knows he's a badass. Well, if you read the book, it's not about being a badass. It just so happens that I do some badass things, right? So anyway, that's the book.
Well,
I,
I will say that last chapter you did is phenomenal, and it is a very inspirational book.
yeah,
I
thank you.
definitely recommend it.
Um, so a little bit on my backstory. I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest version. So I grew up in the military. My dad spent 20 years in the Army. So I grew up in the military culture, was raised mostly in Germany, but also Fort Carson, Colorado, Fort Gordon, Georgia, um, Fort Lewis, Washington, which is actually where I was born, Madigan Army Hospital.
Oh, okay.
Uh, so I grew up in a military environment and a culture, right? It was different back then, in the 70s, 60s and 70s, and even the early 80s. Um, when I graduated high school in 1981, I went into the Army. I joined with two of my best friends, and
Mhm.
we ended up so they did the old bait and switch. I wanted to be a ranger. I saw in that TV guide, Army Rangers, guy come out of jungle, camouflage, rappel rope, car 15.
I had
I
that
said,
poster.
yeah. Did
Yeah.
you? Yeah. Well, that's what got me going to the recruiter's office, right? Now I didn't tell my father about it, but anyways, and then they told me, well, if you bring 2 friends, we'll give you whatever, it was a bonus, like a $2,000, and we'll promote you and all 2 of your buddies to E2. Like, wow. So, anyways, I lured my friends in, and we all joined up together. The 3 of us called us the 3 amigos, which is funny because one guy was black, one guy was Mexican, and I'm the white guy. But we're to this day best friends. I mean,
Yeah.
best friends. I've always been best friends. I mean, it was really amazing, our journey together. But so then we get, we do all that, and then they come back with, oh, sorry guys, there's no more Ranger slots, because that's what we signed up for. But we can get you an 82nd. It's real easy. You just call the sergeant major, tell the sergeant major you want to go to Ranger school, and he'll send you, no problem. You just lied to us, right? You know how hard that is to get to Ranger school. Just, hey, sergeant major, I want to go to Ranger school. Please send me. That doesn't work that way. So, anyways, we ended up spending our first. Actually, you mentioned first 504. I actually started out in the first 504. I got assigned to first 504. My 2 buddies got assigned to second 325th Airborne Infantry. And I was a little disappointed because I was hoping we'd stay together,
Yeah.
And so, and I tell you what, my experience in the first 504 was really bad. This was in the early days of the 82nd, in the 1980s, early, 1981, in fact. And there's a reason they were called the jumping junkies, freaking, and so, post-Vietnam attitudes were a little different. And I remember, man, just coming in and getting hazed by the platoon sergeant and the, squad leaders. And, they were just playing stupid games. Like, we had to go outside. I remember right off the bat doing the EIB training. And, you go to different stations around the company area, right? And I remember these guys would just do dumb shit. It's like I'm the new guy here. I'm trying to assimilate, and I'm standing there, and one guy will get on his hands and knees behind me, and the other guy will try to push me over him. Just stupid shit you did in elementary school,
Yeah.
And I was really disappointed by that, and just the harassment and hazing, and I just didn't feel like I was part of this fucking unit, man. Sorry about my language, but I try to manage that as best I can. But so I ended up calling my dad, and my dad's like, no problem, man. My dad's an old retired E7, but he knows the system really well. He's old school, Vietnam. So he ends up calling a guy, Colonel Hamilton. He was the battalion commander for 2nd 325th.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, hey, man, here's the situation. My son joined with these 2 guys. They really want to be together. And it just so happened Colonel Hamilton was also from Sacramento, California, where we're from. So it was a perfect fit. He goes, don't worry about it. I got this. So he does a VOCO, a vocal order down to the battalion commander for the first 504. And basically, they say, pack your shit. You're going to second 325. Man, when the platoon sergeant came in, the squad was like, who do you think you are? Blah, 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 blah. So, and they beat me up pretty good for that too, right? For like,
Yeah.
some extra juice to get me out of that place. But I ended up in the second 325th Airborne Infantry with my friends. And then a year later, my platoon was designated the 82nd Airborne Alert Platoon. And the reason why is because General Lindsay at the time wanted to restart the alert program, right? There hadn't been Vietnam. And so what they did was they looked at all the units in 82nd, and they looked at our RTEP, scores.
Yep.
And my platoon had a very high RTEP score. We got to feel, we were freaking super soldiers. I mean, in the weekends, we were a bunch of freaking drunkards. But when we went to we got busy, got it done.
Yeah.
And so as a result, we got designated as the 82nd LRRPs. We ended up getting attached to the 313th MI battalion. Not sure that was a good fit. They thought it made sense, but there's some funny shit that happened there with us and the rest of the MI battalion.
That's an ongoing story in LRRS, was the LRRS and the MI. Yeah.
Yeah. So we ended up down there, and then so at this point, we're coming up on 1983. I'd gone to Recondo School, which is actually PNOC Recondo, Primary Non-Commissioned Officer's Course / Recondo School. I don't believe they have Recondo School anymore, but Recondo was.
They have that. It's called Recondo Base Camp.
Okay.
And I went to pre-ranger out there, and I had talked to a friend of mine. They've now got a. It's not pre-ranger, but it's kind of like, it's sort of a Recondo course going as well. Not small unit tactics emphasis.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so I went through that, it was basically a little short mini ranger school, if that, but I remember we went through Pinocchio, and then the second phase was Recondo School. And I remember this was October. We're out in the field, Fort Bragg, and we had early morning formation. Thought I was going to PT, but we noticed there were a lot of fast movers flying around Pope Air Force Base, a lot of activity going on, even though we're in the field. And then the next thing we know, the first sergeant, he has the formation. He says, if your name's called out, he goes, report back to your unit. And we're like, what's going on here? And then they start calling everybody's names. By the time I got back to the unit, my platoon had already left for Grenada. And so I show up and, they're gone, and I'm a little disappointed because I wanted to go too. And so I talked to the first sergeant at the company. He's like, well, he goes, we do have we have an aircraft going down and carrying supplies, batteries, because the entire battalion was down there and including LRRPs. And he said, well, you can fly down there and escort that equipment and link up with the platoon. So good. So I ended up getting on a C-141 with a pallet of batteries for us. And we arrive in Grenada. I arrived in Grenada. It was later in the evening. I mean, it was late afternoon. And I show up, and there at the time on Salinas Airfield, aircraft didn't land at night. They only landed a day. They landed, they offloaded, and they took off real quick, right? They didn't hang around because there's still active engagements going on. And so I remember getting off with the batteries and stuff. I'm actually the only guy on the airplane besides the pilots and the crew chief, and they already left. And I'm standing with a pallet full of batteries and stuff. And the aircraft or the airfield commanding officer, I remember he was a first lieutenant. It was him and another guy, an NCO. After a while, they're like, what are you doing here? I said, well, I'm waiting on my platoon, blah, blah, blah. You pick up these batteries. And well, we don't have any information regarding that. They didn't know you're coming. I said, yeah, they're supposed to know I'm coming. And I'm a Spec 4 at the time. And so I waited for probably an hour on this pallet. It was getting pretty dark. And at some point, the lieutenant walked up to me and goes, listen, man, you cannot stay here. And I said, what do you mean I can't stay here? Where am I supposed to go? He goes, I don't know where you're going to go, but you can't stay here. I said, you serious? Right? And yeah, I'm like, and he's like, do you know how to get a hold of my platoon? He goes, no, I don't have the means to reach anybody here. He goes, but basically we're shutting down operations and you're going to have to leave. You can't stay here. And I'm like, well, hell, if I can't stay here, where am I supposed to go? I don't know where I'm going, And so he just kind of shrugged his shoulders like, and so I thought, well, shit, can I have at least a couple of magazines of ammunition? So he did. They gave me some ammo. I locked and loaded. And I literally walked off in the middle of the night into Grenada, and I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where I'm going, right? So I just start walking aimlessly down some dirt roads. And I ended up walking all the way to Georgetown, to the capital, right? And before I entered the capital, I thought, you know what? I said, I don't know if this is a good idea. I don't know who's occupying the capital. I don't know what's going on in there. I could walk right into, friendly four lines to get shot by my own guys, And so I thought about it. I was like, I think it's a bad idea. So let me turn around. So I walked back down this dirt road for miles, right? I walked for several hours. It's pitch dark, jungle all around me. Nothing's going on. And as I'm finally a couple hours into it, I'm walking along, and all of a sudden all I hear was, halt, who goes there? And I recognized the voice. It was a guy named Sean Pearson. Sean was in my team.
Oh my God.
I go, Sean? And he goes, Dale? And it was like, yeah, we're hugging and like, yeah, and I was so happy. It's like, oh my God, I found my family, and and so I ended up so I linked up with my platoon that night, and from there on we started running our operations there. We were responsible for literally manning a lot of the islands around Grenada. Like, for example, there was one island called Green Island. I still remember it was about maybe 300 yards or 300 meters by 150 meters. And it had one like one peak in the middle that maybe rose 300 feet, right? And that was it. And but we knew that the PRA, the Panamanian, not Panamanian, sorry, wrong country, the Grenadians, they call them People's Republic of Grenada or something like that. I can't remember now offhand. Them and the Cubans were burying caches
Mm-hmm.
around smaller islands, right? And they were going out and recovering them at night and continuing their fight. So we would go out and we would literally set up an OP, and we could see all the way around the island any
Yeah.
boats that were coming in. We could call in and have you had the 117th Cavalry on standby with their helicopters. They could fly in and deal with it, whatever. Or if we had to, we could deal with it. But we were small 4-man teams.
Yeah.
I remember on one occasion, one of our teams, there was 2 guys on the team, a guy named Young, and another guy was Kirk Newman and Steve Young. And they were out on the same island, and they saw a boat coming, a small launch, with about 4 or 5 guys on it. And so they maneuvered down towards the beach, saw the boat land. The guys got out of the boat, they posted left-right security, got out and started digging up a cache.
Oh,
And
wow.
looked like they were getting ready to start digging up a cache. And my guys were coming down a trail still to close on them. And I think it was the left flank security just opened up point blank on them, right? I mean, he walked right into his gunfire and didn't hit him. But they could feel the muzzle blast in their face and pieces and parts of their equipment falling off. And so they died behind a berm. And they returned fire. And then the five op 4 ran back to the boat, jumped in the boat. Our guys continued to fire. They watched a couple of them fall in the water. They saw the other 3 pull them into the boat. The boat took off. They called for a QRF to come in. QRF didn't show up till the next day. It was, till daylight.
Yeah.
But on the way in, they found a couple bodies floating out in the ocean with gunshot wounds to them. So we know our guys got at least a couple of them and stymied their attempt to recover cache. But those same 2 guys, believe it or not, besides getting decorated for that, they also were. A lot of times what we did is we got extracted from the island via a spy system, right? We basically lock into it
Yeah.
and basically fly out like that because the helicopters couldn't land. And on the way out of their mission, they've noticed a small boat had capsized with a bunch of kids in it that were out fishing, and they were drowning. And one of the kids was still flopping around the water. So the helicopter came to a hover, started to sink the helicopter down. Kurt was on the bottom of the fast rope, locked in.
Mm-hmm.
Was big, and he was able to pick one of the kids up, grab him, and lift him out of the water. He said the kid was holding on to his shark. He didn't want to let go of his shark, but he was hanging on to the shark and brought it with him. But they got him out. So between the 2 of those guys, they were the most decorated soldiers come out of Grenada. They got Bronze Stars, they've got Purple Hearts, they've got soldiers medals for the rescue. They did it. So it's pretty interesting. That out of that platoon, the 2 most decorated guys were from there.
Yeah.
But Grenada was an interesting experience. When I look back, it was a good experience overall. It was kind of a cool experience. But from there, what happened was, so this was my first 4 years of enlistment, and I got to a point in the 82nd where I wasn't happy being, digging foxholes and cleaning my M16 for 3 days in a row.
Yeah.
I didn't quite feel challenged. So I thought, well, you know what? Do I really want to stay or do I want to get out? And I had a wife at the time and my little baby girl. I think she's probably about 6 months old or something like that. And I hit a crossroad and I had to make a decision. Do I want to stay in it or do I want to get out?
Yeah.
And so I explored the option and I said, let me call my mom. I said, hey, mommy, I'm thinking about getting out of the Army. Would you mind putting up with me and my wife and my daughter for about 3 months? I get on my feet. And my mom, in her very harsh German accent, was like, no, not no, but hell no. And so, so I said, thanks, Mom. Yeah, I love you too. And so, basically I was stuck. But at the same time, I got a letter from the unit saying that I was eligible to apply to try out, right? So I would laugh when dudes go, yeah, dude, you'd have wanted me, but I turned them down because I had something better to do. Like, no, that's not how it works. They send you a letter saying you are eligible to apply. After they screened everybody's records, you fall in the category where you meet the prerequisites to apply.
Yeah.
And then you apply. If you apply, you go through the application process, you meet a very stringent criteria, then okay, you know, then you get selected to attend the assessment selection course to see if you can pass to
Yeah.
be a Delta, right? And you're not even a Delta Force operator to see if you can go through the operator training course, which is almost another 7 months, which is also a selection process. So the Delta Force selection process is by far the hardest selection process in the world.
Yeah.
You know, it's harder than, and I never went through BUDS. I don't have to go through BUDS, but you know, I went through the Q course. I went through a lot of other hard schools. And here's the deal: all those schools emphasize what? Basically, um, a group selection process. You go through as a group, right? You know, and then you guys get chopped out of the herd because they didn't make standard or whatever. But Delta Force selection, you go through on your own merits. It's an individual effort. You're not with the herd. You're all alone every day, all day, and you have very limited instructions. You're told to do the best you can, but you don't know what the standard is. Well, what do I have to? What standard do I have to meet? They don't tell you. They just tell you do the best you can, right? So it becomes a mental game, and
Yeah.
all the pressure you're under, you put yourself under, right? If you really want it bad enough. So again, I will argue it is by far the hardest selection course in the world, bar none. To give you an example, when I went through, and I only run 2 selection courses a year. When I went through, I had a weird class for whatever reason. There was 110 candidates in my class. Normally it's only 100.
Yeah.
110 at that time. Of the 110 that went through, 16 of us completed. Well, 16 of us made it to the end. And then of the 16 that went the rest of the way, 6 of us made it to the board, and 3 of us got selected on the from the board. So 3 out of 110 made it. I was the youngest guy at age 23 at the time to get selected. The average age was 33. So what I achieved was, you know, extraordinary in the sense that statistically I should have never made it. I didn't
No,
have
you
the
shouldn't have.
pedigree.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, I didn't have the pedigree. I wasn't a ranger. I wasn't SF. I'm just a grunt. You know,
Yeah.
I'm really good at hearing everything's around my back, sitting on a tree, cleaning M16, digging foxholes up, digging them up to fill them back up. You know, and
Well,
but
let's, I tell you, can we kind of like circle back to on because when you all turned that platoon in the 82nd into the LRRP platoon, did you all get like any specialized training or was there
uh,
anything? It was just the here's
no,
the book and
yeah, pretty much. We were all self-taught. You know, we tried to go to whatever schools we could go to.
hmm
Um, Sneak a couple guys into some kind of radio school, RTO, whatever, or whatever. And at that time we had the DMDGs, right? The
yep.
digital message, what's it, digital messaging device, something.
DDMG.
Yeah.
I remember
Uh,
a lot of times the A would not work on it. That was
yeah. Yeah, we had, we got all the weird stuff that, we had to learn, almost self-teach ourselves on. And,
yeah.
and, we did get an opportunity to go to, Hereford, England, to the 22 SAS compound and train with their LRRPs, but it really wasn't much of a training in as much as it was, they're Brits, man. They just want to drink and, drink
Yeah.
tea or drink beer, and we did, and had a good time, and, learned what we could from them as well. But we didn't get any. There was no lure school to go to at the
Yeah.
time, and a lot of the training we had was self-taught. Everything from vehicle identification
hmm
to tactics in the field. What to carry to the field for long range, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So um, that went on for. So I stayed there for at least 3 years till my enlistment was over, and I re-enlisted, and then I tried out for the unit, and then
Yeah.
I went straight to the unit. And I got to tell you, man, the 82nd LRRPs was the guys were great, man. They were really great. They supported the hell out of me when they found out I was going to try out for Delta. The entire chain of command was like, you know what? Uh, to them, it was like I was almost like godlike. Are you going to really try out for those guys? Yes, I am. And they saw my motivation, my dedication to it, and there was actually a couple other guys that were studs, man. They were really good dudes. And in fact, one of them was an SF, was a Green Beret, and we would train together, and we trained like freaking madman. They actually didn't make it. I'm the only one out of the 3 that made it. And
Wow.
so when it was all over, I remember we had a platoon basically formation as I was basically clearing everything. And I remember they presented me with my own M1911 45. The unit got together, the platoon got together in
Wow.
1911, which was, I got to tell you, man, that was like amazing because how many guys get a M1911, especially enlisted guys, Spec 4s, E5s.
That's
So
pretty
that,
doggone rare.
yeah, so they gave me this firearm, but even to train up to that for the last 9 weeks, they were like, listen, man, you just train and do what you got to do. Don't worry about coming to training.
Hmm.
Um, just train. And they gave me every opportunity to succeed.
That's
And I
awesome.
did. And as a reward walking out, on top of that, they gave me the pistol. So for that, I'm pretty grateful for that, man. But I think I made them proud too. They were proud
Oh
to say,
yeah.
what own had made it, to that level. And but yeah, so going back to the beginning of our conversation, so I like I said, I started out in the 82nd. I ended up in the unit. Um, and then I spent 10 years in the unit, and I was everything from a breacher to a team leader to a acting troop sergeant major, to acting troop commander, instructor. And then I ended up, while I was there, going to the Q course, became a Green Beret. I was
Hmm.
light and heavy weapons expert. And then ultimately, I ended up finally going to 3rd Special Forces Group when I left the unit. I had some personal issues, divorce. It's hard to be deployable when you're a single father with 2 kids and your wife has left you. And
Yeah.
so anyway, not making excuses. It was for I took advantage of it as a short reprieve. At this point, I had been kicking indoors and humping a rucksack all my life, and so now I had an opportunity to fly a desk for about a year and a half and try to recover. I ended up in 3rd Special Force Group. I was the assistant ops NCO for group at the group level. And then
Were they
after
standing up the SIF companies then, or was that still further
they,
down?
no, they already had SIF at that point. They already had SIF companies at that point.
Yeah.
3rd group didn't have a SIF company, but 7th group did. So they still had their SIF, right? And 1st group, but 3rd group was still a fledgling unit. And I'd gotten there, a few years after they had formed it up. But I got to tell you, it was a good time. But so going back to start points, I did, LRRPs, infantry, the unit, 3rd group. I retired in 2001, actually prior to 9/11, about almost 2 months before 9/11,
Mhm.
and and then I started my own security company, which I did really well at that. In fact, I'd already started prior to 9/11, and then when 9/11 happened, the door swung wide open. I
Oh
was
yeah.
I was in the nuclear security uh, space, and so my company actually provided all security consulting for about 42 nuclear power plants in the United States,
Mhm.
and we had it locked down pretty good to the point where in 2004, G4S Wackenhut offered to buy us out, and so they ended up buying our company. I had a business partner who turned out to be a snake, but I'll save that story for another time. But anyways, we ended up selling the company to G4S, and I just turned right around and reincorporated a company called Risk Control Institute, doing the same thing.
Yeah.
They actually bought my company the first time to get rid of the competition because I was keeping them from getting in that space, and so they bought my company, bought the proprietary material, everything, and with it, I turned right around, reincorporated, and I go, hey, I got another company, and so I did this again, right, and
So
and
much for that
so
non-compete.
yeah, so I did that from 2011. I had more service agreements in the nuclear industry, and then in 2011, I sold the company again to a company called Intrepid, and they bought my company, and then I ended up running my company under them as a vertical. And so, anyways, so my career path a little bit, just after I left the military, I started a security company. 9/11 happened. I built this company. It was rocking and rolling, doing really, really well. Made a lot of money. Then I got recruited by OGA, and so I went through their vetting process, which, by the way, it's not physical, but it's psychological. And I got to tell you, man, it's probably harder than any other selection course out there, even though it's not physical, because you are vetted individually. Polygraph testing. I mean, one hell of a background investigation, like, you know, compared to the military, it was 10x. Like, holy shit, man. They dug deep, man. Like, they went back to my fucking, when I was 5 years old, asking my 5-year-old little girlfriend in first grade if I was a good dude, you know? Did I smoke drugs, use drugs back then? I was like, damn, you guys are thorough. But anyways, I did make it. And, you know, I was one of the few again. Attrition rate's very high there, but I spent 9.5 years with them, basically doing the same thing I did in the military, but with a lot less Americans on my side. Yeah, and but making a lot more money, right, for the risk. But I really enjoyed it. I would argue that it was a better experience than anything I ever did in the military, because I was entrusted to go down range with myself and or one or two other Americans
Mm-hmm.
and manage anywhere from 60 to 500 pipe hitters,
Yeah.
local Afghans or Iraqis or others, and wage war on terrorists. And I had complete autonomy to do what I wanted. I had plenty of money. And it's like, in some ways, I felt like Colonel Kurtz up the river in Apocalypse Now, you know, it's like, man, you know, but so that all happened. And then in 2011, I got discovered by Discovery Channel, literally, and for a TV show called One Man Army. So I
Mm-hmm.
thought, heck, I'll try it out. Might be a good closing chapter to my life story. I thought I was in my twilight years already. Man,
Yeah.
was I ever. Uh, so I ended up interviewing for that, ended up getting selected, made national TV. And because of my performance on TV, I got a phone call from NBC a few months later, like, hey, we saw you here. We really like what we saw, blah, blah, blah. Would you like to try out for this TV show called Stars Earned Stripes with Terry Crews, Layla Ali, Dean Cain, you know, there's Todd Palin, Sarah Palin's husband, Chris Kyle.
Yeah.
And so I tried out. I went through the entire interview process. Then they actually flew me out to Universal Studios, where they actually set up entire studio, cameras, lights, had me sitting in a little chair out front and center, and basically started asking me questions. I want to see how I could perform in front of cameras and pressure, you know,
Mhm.
which handle myself no problem, right? And so I was one of 8 guys to get selected out of, I forget how many applicants they had, something like 6,000 applicants. You
Yeah.
know, so I was one of the 8 that actually got selected. So I ended up on that, and that took off. Next thing you know, I'm being surrounded by production companies that wanted me to be the poster boy
Mhm.
for the, you know, blah, 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 blah. I'm running around Hollywood with these people. They're promoting me. I'm talking to the networks, blah, this, that, and that. And now I'm Mr. Hollywood all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And very strange culture. I'm not gonna lie, man. And I felt like a fish out of water in a lot of ways. But that went on for a few years. And then finally, I decided this is really not for me, even though I had a lot of potential. I was told that if I had moved to Los Angeles, I could probably be on a TV set, movie set on a regular basis, and I could potentially be the next Danny Trejo.
Wow.
And so you know, I had potential. I really did. The look, you know, and I think I know a little bit about acting. You know, I can be develop that, you know, but I had this look about me and this presence, I guess, people, it appealed to people. But I realized that it's not for me, you know, and I literally ended up moving to Hong Kong and worked for a company there where I helped manage their security detail for a multi-billionaire investment banker.
Mhm.
Um, so I lived there downtown, Wan Chai, great time, man. I loved Hong Kong before the Chinese took it back, or the British gave it back to them, or whatever the fuck they surrendered it. I don't
That's
know.
another bad story. Another
Yeah,
poor.
that was a Yeah, big mistake, man. Big mistake,
Yeah.
man. But anyways, Hong Kong was probably one of the most amazing places I've ever been. I've been to over 101 countries, either lived there, worked there, or visited there. And Hong Kong was my favorite city. When I went back after the Chinese took it back, it was no longer the same. Very different. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. So I met my wife, my wife's Indonesian. Um, and she was there, and she ended up coming back to Indonesia. I ended up following her back to Indonesia, and one thing led to another. I saw some business opportunities here up in Jakarta. We opened up a security company. I became partners with a multi-billionaire investment banker again. Um, Chinese guy who did me no favors. In fact, I would argue he owes me about $450,000. I put a lot of work into this project, this partnership,
Yeah.
and literally, he didn't pay me. And so I realized I had no juice in this country to do anything about it. And my wife and I packed up our stuff along with the police. And we had a lot of police friends, and they loaded us up in a bunch of deuce and a halves and drove us from Jakarta all the way to Bali. It took about 2.5 days of just straight driving. We showed up here. We had a house picked out. We had an office picked out. Within 30 days, we had our first contract with Marriott Properties, and we were providing canine security, explosive dogs, narcotic dogs. And from there, the business just bloomed, man. Right up till COVID happened. It kicked us in the balls pretty good, but we managed to keep maintaining a pulse. And then post-COVID, at some point, business started picking back up, and we actually have less clients now, but we're making more money than we ever did. And
Right.
so the security company runs itself. My wife actually runs it now, all of it. At one point, we had 65 full-time canine handlers. We had 45 canines with a street value of about $850,000. We were kicking ass and taking names. And then I started venturing out. I've been doing a lot of other security related work on my own. I do a lot of consulting. I do a lot of recovery operations. I go bring people back, rescue if I have to, recover if I have to, repatriate them, bring them back to, their home countries. I do a lot of different things, right? So interdiction, a lot of stuff I did in the military. I do that and on my own. So that's kind of I do that. And then you mentioned earlier, I'm a life coach. I've been life coaching for about 6 years now on a consistent and regular basis. In fact, my coaching list is always full. I get a lot of clients that are interested in learning the way of Dale Comstock. And so what I actually teach is optimal performance, the science of success. I teach you how science to be successful. It's very simple, but I teach you all the mechanics of it. And, if you follow my course, which everybody does, when they follow the methodology, they're all in some way or another become much better versions of themselves. In fact, I use the argument that right now doesn't look like it, but I'm actually sitting on my bed with my back up for my office, right? And behind me on the screensaver, but I'm living in Bali. I'm looking out my window right now, my swimming pool, my palm trees, my beautiful wife, and I live this life in paradise, and I travel where I want, when I want. I do really cool Jason Bourne stuff. I'm accountable really to nobody. I don't have a boss. I haven't had a boss since, really since I left the military in 2001. And so I live this sovereign life. And it all started with me being in the 82nd, just a grunt, with nothing, no college education, nothing like that. And here I am, right? So I guess the reason I'm kind of saying this to you and the audience out there is anything's possible if you want it bad enough. There is a science behind it. It's all science. It has nothing to do with willpower and has nothing to do with hard work. If you're working hard to be successful, you're doing it wrong. Willpower dies. It wanes. It always wanes. Look at your New Year's Eve resolution. How many people keep a New Year's Eve resolution? Can't.
Hardly any.
Right. And so it's not about that. And there it is. There's the key. There's the secret. The secret is actually in the science. If you understand the science, you can do whatever you want. That's why I live this dream. I have several companies. I have a brick and mortar company. I have virtual companies. As I mentioned earlier, I live in 3 countries between here, the Philippines, and Panama City, Florida. So anyways, that's a little my backstory about, how I arrived to where I'm at today. But it all had its impetus with starting in the 82nd, And actually, when I joined the 82nd, I had no vision of where I wanted to go. Like, okay, I just want to be a soldier like my dad was. I miss the military culture. That's all I do is I just want to go back to where, I'm among what I think of my own, because man, when my dad retired, we ended up in the San Francisco Bay Area, man, Fresno, California. And I'm like, and I'm suddenly I'm taking out of the military culture, and I'm dropped into a tank full of civilian kids that are not like military kids, right? Nobody was. And it was such a weird place for me. And I had a hard time assimilating. I really did. It affected my grades and everything else. I was so much like a fish out of water. All I wanted to do is go back to what I knew, what I was familiar with, which was the military. And my dad wanted me to go to college. That was his goal. Nobody on either side of my family had ever gone to college. We were just poor white trash. And I shouldn't say trash. We were just poor white people, and we didn't get, nothing got handed to us. We had to work for it. And my dad, that was his mission. He wanted me to go to college. He was going to pay for it. And I knew that no way I'm going to college because I'm just not ready for it.
You
I'm
weren't
just
ready. No, it was it wasn't in your mindset to do it.
no, it wasn't. And so this is where I disappointed him. I snuck down to the recruiter's office when I was 17 and enlisted. And when he found out, I could tell I broke his heart. And he
Right.
was so disappointed. You know, I was supposed to be the one that he could go, look at my son, college degree. And I tried to explain to him, but Dad, I want to be like you. I want to be a soldier. He was like, dude, you'll suck as a soldier. He goes, you're too lazy, right? And I was a little shocked that he said that. I was like, you know, I was like, okay. But I proved him wrong, right? So I promised my father, I said, I'm going to join the military, but I'm going to get my college degree. I promised, Dad. And now I'm going to be a soldier. I'm going to be the best soldier I can be.
Yeah,
And so
definitely.
while I went in, I did all these things. I went to school, night school. You try going to night school, and being a Green Beret, a Delta Force operator, and kicking indoors. That ain't easy. You know,
I don't
and
see
trying to
how
get
you can do it.
and being right and being married. So, but I did it, and man, when I tell people sometimes with some of my schedules, man, they're like, "What?" For example, there was a one period I remember clearly where I was married, had three kids. I was a you know I was the team sergeant for ODA 394 Special Forces. So I'm a full-time Green Beret. I'm going to martial arts training 2 nights a week with my kids. I got 2 6-degree black belts, a first-degree black belt now. But we went to school and I boxed professionally at the same time as a professional boxer. I had to train for fights.
Mhm.
I was going to school full time at night. Webster University, 4 hours a night, 2 nights a week, 8 hours a week. So I was literally considered a full-time student. I was running a part-time business training bodyguards out of Mexico that were coming to Southern Pines, North Carolina. I'd have to drive all the way out there, an hour and a half, to train these guys at their hotel at night just to come back and pick up, you know. So I was like ultra busy.
Yeah.
There was no time in there for anything extra, but it really came down to task management, time management, you know, and learning how to make the most out of every second of my day. And that meant, sacrificing some sleep. But the sleep and rest I sacrificed then, I'm making up for it on this end because like this morning when you called me here in Bali, I woke up, it was 8:30. I knew I had a podcast at 9 o'clock. I wake up 8:30 in the morning, and I go to bed like I stayed up, I don't know, until 2 o'clock in the morning watching TV, and oh yeah, I'm writing another book. And I was writing the other book. Um,
Well, if
so
you don't mind asking, what's the next book going to be about?
okay, so the next book is going to be about. So I'm actually writing 5 books. Now I've already written the Third Special Forces Hand Combat Manual, which became the base document for the Army-wide hand-to-hand program. Two, I wrote my book
When did
American.
you write that, if you don't mind my asking?
It was so go back in time. When I went to third group in 1996, the group sergeant major at the time, he calls me into his office and goes, "Hey man," he goes, "I heard about you, blah 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 blah," and he asked me his question. He goes, "Let me ask you a question. What's wrong with Rambo?" And I looked at him and thought it was some kind of a trick question, and I said,
Are you talking about the movie or the Sergeant Major?
"No, you're talking about the movie. You're talking about the movie, right? Not Sergeant Major Rambo, right?" So, I said, "I don't think there's anything wrong." He goes, "That's right." He goes, "Why can't we be more like Rambo?" And I looked at him. He goes, "How come we cannot be, the Rambos? Why do we have to be these gentlemen warriors, right? No hand-to-hand programs, and just a bunch of wimps, right? And SF." And I'm like, "Yeah," and I could get behind that. He goes, "I want you to run my hand-to-hand program. I want you to start a hand-to-hand program. Can you do that? In addition to being a group assistant ops NCO." I was like, okay, that means I got to come in at 5 o'clock in the morning on my time and
Mm-hmm.
train. So I did. And every morning for 2 weeks, 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, I would train one ODA on my hand-to-hand program from soup to nuts. I developed a hand-to-hand program for Delta. There was no program over there. There was no program anywhere. We actually started the program there. I brought it to the third group. And from there, it just morphed to where it is today, right? And so as part of the hand-to-hand program, I wrote the manual for guys. So when the ODAs go down range, they can take the manual with them and they can continue to practice their combatives. And they've got a reference guide. That's what I call it. So I wrote that one circa 1997 is when it got published in the Army. And then I wrote American Badass in 2001. And then I wrote another book about my ex-wife, but I canned that because, what I did is I published it and I was going to take the royalties and give it to our daughter for college,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And she just couldn't get her head around the fact that I published a book about her. And so all her friends, everybody got on Amazon. And one started, said I stole the, like, dude, I wrote the story. I created it, right? And so I decided, thanks for sabotaging my daughter's freaking college fund, all of you, including her mom.
Yeah.
So I pulled it down. I still have it. I'm going to rewrite it and republish it because I had a co-write author write it with me. And I feel like, what, he deserves something for his effort, and we're going to make it happen anyway. So, but I'm currently writing a book. I call it The Razor's Edge, Running the Razor's Edge. And it's about my experience as a mercenary. I didn't mention that part earlier, but I've legitimately worked as a mercenary, and I'm not talking about a Blackwater contractor or anything like that. I've literally worked for foreign friendly countries and governments, helping them, prosecute their targets. So, for example, in 2015, 2016, I was part of an 11-man strike team. In fact, I ran the strike team to go to the Emirates, particularly into Yemen, to target various HVTs that were either financing or the heads of terrorist organizations, or in some way, somehow influencing or representing terrorist organizations. So Yemen was a hornet's nest. You had the Houthis there. You had Al Qaeda Arabic Peninsula, ACAP there. You had ISIS there.
Taliban,
Right. You had quite a few
Ada.
people there, and it basically is just a hornet's nest. And the Yemenis resistance fighters were doing very well against their adversary. And so the Emiratis were, they had bases set up there. They had kind of gone neutral because they had taken some heavy casualties at some of their FOBs with VBIDs. And so they wanted to become more surgical and precise in their targeting. And that's where we came in. So I went in with this 11-man strike team, and our job was to surgically erase certain people that were bad guys. So anyways, that came out. The BBC story just came out. A documentary just came out about 3 weeks ago. You can look it up.
Mhm.
It talks about American mercenaries killing in Yemen, right? It was very a leftist twist to the whole freaking thing. It was way off the mark, but I'm
That's
getting
kind of
ready
what
to.
I gathered from it, that it was kind of a hit piece. And I'll
It
put a
was,
link in there in here for that BBC thing, but it was
yeah,
definitely kind of a hit piece. And the lady reporter was either pushing an agenda or she was extremely naive about warfare.
both. In fact, her name was Nawal. Nawal is a Yemenis journalist,
Yeah.
very pro-Arab, very anti-West, and she was a ringer. When the BBC crew came to Florida to film, they wanted to film me doing all this training and do the documentary. Um, they didn't tell me they were bringing her. When they showed up to the
Mm-hmm.
training location, they go, "Oh, by the way, we brought Nawal. She's a journalist who's going to do the interview." I knew who she was right away. I was like, "Oh, okay." I could just feel the tension already. I could just
Oh,
sense
yeah.
it, man. Yeah, this is going to be interesting. Um, Honestly, the interview was about 3.5 hours long. Just the interview with her, and
Mhm.
there's just a small fragment of that on the documentary. But I pretty much shot down everything she tried to assert. She tried to push a lot of agendas and lies and bullshit. And I checked her on everything with actually hard facts and proof. And to your point, she wasn't quite as informed as she thought she was, because when she met me, it's like, oh shit. And I actually showed her evidence how she was wrong.
Mhm.
Um, and everything I had said in the interview was the reason I did the documentary. Let me kind of backstep on that one a little bit. The only reason I agreed to do the documentary is because I found out that guy, that Isaac, the SEAL, was on there.
Mhm.
That guy is a turd. That guy is a turd. That guy actually, the old saying, what you do downrange stays downrange, right? Mine drops
Exactly.
it. Right. So that was, that's a given. We all knew whatever we do downrange, even though it was not illegal. It was not illegal what we were doing. The world doesn't need to know about it. So 2018, I get a phone call from a guy named Aaron Rossum from Reuters, and he wants to talk to me about this mission. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I realized right then something went wrong.
Yeah.
Somebody spoke. Turns out it was Isaac. Not only did he speak, he gave up all our names and phone numbers, all of us on the team, without even confirming with us. So we're
Oh,
getting these
wow.
calls from Reuters, and they're like, "Hey, you can give us your version because tomorrow our version is coming out." And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And then their version came out, and it wasn't a good version. It was obvious that somebody was lying, i.e., probably Isaac, and these guys were making it up as they go. And so next thing you know, I see Twitter, they're calling me a murderer using weapons of mass destruction, and I'm like, Jesus Christ Jiminy, man, this thing got so twisted out of shape. So I ended up getting on soft rep initially, trying to tell the story to get ahead of it. Finally, this thing seemed to be going away. Nothing was coming out of it. Elizabeth Warren was calling for an investigation, blah, blah, blah. You got all kinds of NGOs and other organizations around the world, particularly in the Middle East, calling for our arrest, human rights violations, blah, blah, blah. They don't know the facts. They had no idea, right? They all just run with whatever they hear. And so that, it kind of seemed to die off until a year ago, BBC called me and they want to talk about Ukraine and the Wagner Group from Russia, doing a comparative analysis of, mercenaries, and they're trying to get more insight. I go, look, I said, those knuckle draggers are nothing but criminals. They were literally criminals. They were liberated out of a prison and said, you can fight and be a mercenary, take your chances on the battlefield or die here in prison. So what they have is a bunch of knuckle draggers out there toting guns, call themselves mercenaries. I said, there's a huge difference between them and my team. My team, we're professionals. We're married men. We're moral. We got ethics.
Professional.
We're professional. Exactly. It's exactly what I told her, because she kept using the word assassin. I go, no. I said, I'm a professional soldier. I'm not an assassin. I don't make bombs. I make explosive devices, charges, right? And so, she kind of tried to dismiss that. Well, the public, they all think. And I said, that's exactly why I'm doing this. I want to educate the public because words matter, right? And so there's a huge difference between an assassin and a professional soldier. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, but none of that mattered because she kept using the word anyway, assassin and bombs, right? So she went right over it. She ran with it anyways. But I think what happened was, after sitting down with her and the rest of the crew, they're like, wow, this scary looking guy is, like my wife always says, I have a Hello Kitty heart. It's got a Hello Kitty heart, right? He's not so scary after all. And he's actually very nice. He's got pictures of his kids and his family on the walls, and he's not, he doesn't have a kill them all, like God sort them out attitude, I'm very compassionate. And so I think what I really think happened was I ended up in the 3 days they were with me winning their hearts and minds. And so I feel like they didn't put the spotlight on me too hard and challenge me too much, other than the one question where she goes, the United States government doesn't think the Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization. And I said, oh, yes, they do. Oh, yes, they do. Oh, yes, they do. Because actually they do. But,
they are a terrorist organization.
Yeah, and so, and a lot of Middle East countries consider them a terrorist organization, even European countries, right? And so, and the part that she conveniently left out was where I said, you know what? I don't care if the U.S. government doesn't think they're a terrorist organization, because I was not working for the U.S. government. I was working for the Emiratis. They thought they were a terrorist organization, and that is all that mattered. And she cut that out, right? So stuff like that, right? But anyways, I kind of feel like, I had an opportunity to tell the truth, at least even if they didn't share my message to everybody else internally, they knew where my heart was and where my team's heart were. And they knew that we really are not bad guys. We're not really assassins, even though she kept using those words. But again, left leaning, I fully expected that, but I had to get ahead of it because I felt like if I didn't, I was afraid Isaac would say something that would be more incriminating. And he kind of did, his smug attitude was, well, did you have run more than 25 missions? I can't talk about that. Hey, just say no. I ran one. How hard was that? Instead of playing this game of being mysterious, all you're doing is creating more questions, and there's going to be more investigations. How many targets did we kill? And then they're already trying to tie us to all kinds of stuff we didn't do. And I disproved in front of her. I disproved that behind the scenes with her. I actually showed her where she was wrong. She accused me of blowing up the governor of Aden in his car with a car bomb. And she insisted on it in the interview. I go, no, I didn't. And I pulled out an intel report and I go, listen here. I go, look at this. I said, he was killed in the beginning of November. We didn't get there till the middle of December. I said, and oh, by the way, look, Al-Qaeda says they took credit for killing him. How is that my fault, right? I wasn't even there. And so the look on her face, like, oh, she had a who ate the canary look on her face, like, okay, next question, and I kept proving her wrong, because they were so wrong. They're so bent on pinning this on Spear Operations Group, because they're the only target they see on the radar, and they just have to assume it must be them, right?
Yeah.
Not realizing there's a lot of cats and dogs in that country, and they're going at it, man. ISIS, I can go on and on and on.
And
But anyways, so the book
in
I'm
my
writing,
very brief exposure to Yemen, there's a lot of dogs in that fight. A lot of dogs.
absolutely, man, absolutely, and they're fighting each other, it's just a free for all. And so she was trying to create a nexus between the U.S. government and the Emiratis, and I wasn't going to let her have that. I said, no, I was working for the Emiratis as a professional soldier, which I'm allowed to do. And so, as we all were allowed to do. So, her point was moot. And then, anyway, so I'm writing the book. I'm telling the story about what actually happened there. It's kind of an interesting story because it's not just about the way we went after the targets and this tactical stuff we did, the strategic stuff we did,
Yeah.
but it's also a story about what goes on inside a team like that in the camp, the internal strife, right? There's all kinds of issues. For example,
Oh yeah.
there are 5 steps of team building. And now I'm going to educate the public. First of all, you have, you're forming, you form the team. Then you have what's called the storming phase, right? Where everybody's kind of locking horns and trying to establish position, right? And then you have the norming stage where, okay, everybody kind of knows their place, their responsibilities. Then you have the performing stage, and then you have the learning stage where it ends, right? So we went through those 5 stages of team building. And there was a lot of leadership dynamics and failure of the leadership, and a lot of weirdness going on, right? And a lot of times, we had to go out the gates and be ready to fight a battle. But before we go out and fight the battle on the streets, we had to, fight the battle within.
Fight the
and get
battle in
over
the team room.
Yeah, so so there's a lot there's a lot about those dynamics in the story. So that's coming out. Me and my partner will have it done in probably the next 45 days. My goal is to have it out and published within 60 days. Because right now what I'm doing is I'm getting interest from Hollywood to make a movie out of it. I got another company wants to come back and do a documentary and talk about the real story that they didn't tell and kind of that piece of it. So the book's coming out. I have 4 other books. As I may have mentioned earlier, I've done a lot of different type of operations, everything from bringing 17-year-old girls back from Guatemala and handing them off to her parents in Singapore to bringing expats out of countries where they can't get out, their passport's been flagged, things like that.
I remember Tommy Carter in the 90s. Of course, I met him later later in the 90s. And I remember him talking about doing that. There was a group of y'all out of Fayetteville that was working that program or that company. I can't remember the names. Man.
No, I don't know that. Sorry, I'm eating my breakfast. But I know the owner of that company. In fact, he and I are still partners on a lot of projects together.
Okay. Yeah, that was getting American, like Saudi American kids who've been kidnapped by their fathers and get them back to America, back to their mothers. Yeah, that's admirable work.
I still work in that space by myself, but I also do various types of interdiction, if you will, bad guys. I do if it falls in the space of security, I do it. All right, and most of it is the cool stuff where I actually get to travel and go out and actually make a difference and help people, So, so I got follow-on books that are coming behind that, tell those stories. I've done everything from, like I said, bodyguard work to
I tell you, when that book comes out about Spear Operation Group, let's get up. Maybe we can do a show about that and go.
Yeah,
that would be.
I'll have the book ready by that time. And then the book will get published, so the story will be out. I can actually talk about the story in more detail. Right now, I don't. Obviously, right now, I'm not telling everything because, look, Hollywood, you can't trust them, man. They will take any story you have and build on it and create their own movie and never give you a cent for it. I already know that, and so a lot of information is close hold. They can make a movie right now based on what they think they know, but they're not going to have the insight, the details, what actually allowed us to accomplish the mission. And it's more than just going out and blowing up a car or a door or shooting somebody. There's another the human element that has to make that happen. So that's going to be in the story. But yeah, it was a good time, but you know, that's the past. That was actually, now that I think about it, that was 8 years ago. And
Yeah.
so people are still talking about it today. It's like, geez, you know, get over it. I mean, it's the BBC show. I think I believe it has around 3.5 million views already. It's one of the view shows they've had where they've had that much viewership in that short of time. So, and I have people even now, they recognize me, you know, hey, you know, I'll come up to, hey, you know, and like the other night I was out with my wife sitting at a table at a bar, and white guy was sitting there with an Indonesian girl and gets ready to leave, walks over to me, shakes my hand, goes, "You're a legend, man." And I looked at him. I said, "Okay, at least, you know, he's shaking my hand. He's like, call me a legend. And now I'm going to kill you, Allah Akbar." You know?
Well, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I have
Sometimes,
to be careful with that too.
yeah, that could definitely happen.
No, it happened. No, I get it all the time. People come up to me and go, "Hey, are you the American badass?" And the first question, if they're not, first question I ask them is, "Why? Are you a friend or your foe?" Right? Because I got to know right now before I own up to anything. But I've had
Mhm.
guys stop cars and ask me the questions. Here in Indonesia, you know, I've had guys stop me in Hong Kong. Everywhere I go, somebody recognizes me.
Yeah.
Someone, you know.
Well, you've got that distinctive Fu Manchu mustache kind of
All
stands.
right, it's the signature
out.
look. I can't get rid of it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, here people go, well, why, why are you so, public? And it's like, I don't have a choice, man. I cannot hide. So I hide in plain view is what I
Mm,
do, and a lot of things I do, people think that, oh, he's just here visiting or he's doing that. But actually, I'm probably doing something else.
yeah.
Um, but there's no point in hiding. Everybody knows where I live, my address is, I've had people call my partners trying to find out where I'm at. And it's like, well, what do you want to know? Click,
Mhm.
there's people out there looking for me, Fortunately, I'm never in the same place very long. I'm
Yeah.
constantly moving around. Um, as I mentioned, 3 countries, and then there's the countries I live in temporarily as well. So these are
Yeah.
some permanent homes.
Oh,
But yeah, it's been an adventure for sure. Like I said, it all started with the 82nd. Never thought for sure. I never knew where I was going to go. I joined the infantry going, okay, I kind of knew in my heart I wanted to be a Green Beret at some point, but I didn't know how to get there, right?
yeah.
That was there. Like, I just didn't know, well, how do you do it? How do you get the process? Didn't know, you
Yeah.
know. And when I realized that, being an infantryman was not very challenging, I mean, yeah, you do a lot of stuff, but, I just felt like cannon fodder. I felt like there's something in my heart. I knew I could do more than this. And it was just serendipity. I got the letter from the unit. And at that point, I wanted to get out. And I'm like, well, if I don't get out, my mom said no. So
Yeah.
I have to stay. Then why don't I go ahead and just go to the top
Yeah.
and be all I can be. So I decided, I'm going to go for the gusto. And I literally went from, the bottom to the top,
Yeah.
in less than a year, and it's just, and people, the other thing I want to tell people is, my success in life and the things I've achieved in life is not because I was a Delta Force operator. I learned a lot by being a Delta Force operator.
Mhm.
But I actually learned a lot about myself. And what happened was the unit, particularly the psychologists, and even the chain of command, illuminated a lot of things about us that probably most of us weren't aware of.
Yeah.
Our personality types, and what made us so unique. And when you start to realize, like, okay, that's why I made it here, and the other guy didn't make it here.
Yeah.
But I didn't make it to Delta Force. I made it to Delta Force because of the person I was before
Yeah.
I got there. The person my dad raised, right? He was a soldier. I already had some of that in me, that
Mm.
patriotism, that regimentation in me. I already had that in me, right? And I love the military. I love John Wayne and Clint Eastwood and that whole thing. And so, this was my opportunity to be. And by the way, at the time when I joined the military, the Army, the recruitment logo was "Be all that you can be." I
Hmm.
still live by that logo today, by the way. I still live by that logo today.
Well,
Be all that you can
they brought that logo back because the
be.
recruiting numbers are so bad.
I tell you what, to this day, I still live by that. When I look at something, go, you know what? That looks interesting. I think I
Yeah.
might want to do that. And then the next thing I say to myself, be all that you can be, go for it, And that's always been, I've lived by that motto since I first joined the military. And so the becoming a Delta operator was just one step. And it's
Mhm.
although a lot of people define me by that time, I don't define myself by that. I'm more than that. I mean, I went from to OGA to being a mercenary. I got a PhD. I've done a lot of things in life. I'm an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur. I've invented a lot of things, started companies. I'm so much more than what I was as a Delta Force operator, right? So every day I get better and better and better. And I never look back. I never look back. I never go back to any of the unit function. Not saying there's anything wrong with it, but I just don't go back. Too many guys keep looking back and they define themselves from, by their past.
Yeah.
And to me, I don't do that. I like, yeah, I used to be in the unit as an operator, Green Beret, I was all these things. I was, but today I'm Dale Comstock, business owner, entrepreneur, author, living a good life, living a dream. That's who I am, and I have a bucket list. I have more things I want to do. And that's what keeps me moving. It keeps me going. It's like being a shark in the water. You got to keep the water running over your gills or you drown, right? And so that's kind of the life that I live here. Any regrets? No, I've had some bad marriages. You know, cost me a lot in that. Look, let's be honest, American man, you know the deal.
Oh yeah.
American, you're a man, you're gonna get screwed. You're nothing but an ATM machine. You're gonna get hosed by the system and by women. And I'm a victim of that system. I've lost everything I owned before I got married, and everything after I got married, to include my kids, for no other reason because I'm a man. Not that I did anything wrong, just because they didn't want to be a part of it no more.
Well,
And
I'll
so
tell you what, Dale. One of these days, I'll tell you my story, and you're gonna go woo.
I'm sure we'll both be crying over some beers, because I can tell you some horror stories too, man. But you know what? At the end of the day, the only regrets are how things turned out, but I don't regret my children.
Kids are
Something
the
good came
best.
out of it, the kids, and it was some positive experiences as a consequence. But outside of that, I don't regret much out of my life. Everything that happened, from birth to death, and everything in between. You know, if I could do it all again, I would do it again, and I'd do it better. I'd even do even more, man. So,
Well,
but
I tell you what, Dale, man, this has been an awesome interview, and I'm gonna let's go ahead and cut her short for this one. And I definitely want to talk to you more offline. But I'd like to do another one on your book.
yeah, man, absolutely.
So I'm gonna go ahead and we're going to bring this to an end. Hold on just a second. That was a great interview, Dale.
Thank you, appreciate it.
That was really good, and it was kind of funny because there was some stuff that popped in my head, and and names as you were talking, and it's like it's Fast Eddie stuck in my mind. Ed Begarin.
Eddie Bulgarian, yeah, I
Yeah,
know Eddie.
he popped in my mind. I was like, oh shit! I'm like, because that's the most fittest guy I think I ever met in my life. And
Yeah,
Tom,
that guy was a stud, man. He was there during my era, and dude, he walked in with his teenage son one day into the unit, and they just got done running or something. And Eddie was, I think at the time, Eddie was in his early 40s, and his son was like 18.
yeah.
And they were both shredded. You couldn't tell who's the father and who's the son. They looked like two brothers, man. Guy was amazing.
Well, I tell you what, the Eddie was working at Marsoc running their selection when he was like 62,
Yeah.
63.